Hello, everyone, and welcome to Schmidtless Live. I'm your host, Kurt Schmidt, president and partner at Foundry, and I am so excited you are here. As you can tell, new studio. It's still coming together. We got a little work to do, but it'll be just fine. But speaking of new, I do have to mention that we are hiring, so make sure you check out foundrymakes.com/careers. Tell a friend, tell two, post it to social media, share it, follow us. Tell everybody we need folks come and join the party. We're having a good times. Speaking of parties, I am excited to talk to my friend Chris Heim. We're going to be talking about all things that have to do with putting people first and strategy second. We've got a big conversation today, so I'm so excited that you're joining us. I'm going to jump right in and talk to Chris here. Chris, how are you today?
Kurt, hey, how you doing? Thank you for having me
good.
today.
Good. Thanks for being here. So, Chris, tell me about your role as CEO at AbeTech. What is AbeTech? What does AbeTech do? And what does your role entail of?
Yeah. So as you said, I'm the CEO of AbeTech Corporation. Our headquarters are in Rogers, Minnesota. We're a fun, kind of mid-sized company. We have about 130 employees. We focus on manufacturing and warehouse type applications. We using RFID and barcode and sensor technology to track product through manufacturing processes and automate supply chain applications.
That's exciting.
Yeah. I've been there 3 years.
Okay.
We're a family-owned company, very rich in culture, very people-focused. A lot of that was in place, when I came. That's why I'm there. I believe in that platform, and it's just been a really fun journey for me, Kurt, to take a wonderful company, and we've grown quite a bit in the last 3 years, and going through growing pains while we're also navigating all these fun things with the pandemic and supply chain. My goodness, it's been a lot, but we're having a blast.
Well, good. I can imagine in the business you're in, the challenge is real because the technology changes every month, right?
It does, yeah.
How do you stay on top of those changes? Is there things that you do that help you stay on top of that?
Well, I guess for me personally, I love using technology to make business better. That's kind of been the platform of my whole career. Sure. I don't necessarily go dive into the details of all the technology, but I love
nobody would want you to, Chris.
but I love understanding how it works, and the business strategy behind technology is super important. And the trends that are taking place, I guess you take some of the challenges that we're having, labor shortage, supply chain issues. Those are problems on one hand, but they're also opportunities to use technology to just solve better business problems. And I love that. Yeah. And so I stay on top of trying to understand the strategic trends. And then, we've got just so many wonderful, really smart engineers and our sales team and our support team. I mean, they're just amazing to know how to make it all work,
Yeah, it's a complex business. But speaking of complex, I mean, that's people management. Tell me a little bit about your journey as a leader. Did you start out, were you in high school like, boy, I can't wait to lead, RFID company and Rogers someday? Tell me about how that happened to
Yeah,
you.
yeah, Kurt, it was all perfectly scripted out, and I'm on page 756 of the book.
Perfect.
No, man, it truly is a journey. I would tell you this. So I've been a CEO for about 8 years, and I never imagined I never knew that I would be a CEO. Um, and I'm learning every day, and I'm loving the journey. And
Mm,
what's happening for me, and especially the last, let's say, 3-4 years. Um, I'm really coming to life as a leader because I'm getting more and more comfortable just being me. I have a huge heart. I love people. I want to make people happy. I want to provide an environment where people can just thrive and spend their days, working on their superpower. And I believe that at my core. But through my journey of being a leader, is I needed to develop the tools and the just the way of going about that, so that you can create a work environment where that actually happens in a consistent manner. And also, I'm just one person, and learning how to lead by helping
right.
other leaders come together with a common set of beliefs, and just methods for managing the business. That's been my journey,
Yeah.
and I love it. I love it a lot. And it's counterbalanced with, of course, all of us as executives, we have to be good at strategy, we have to know how to run a business. But through my journey, this term, people first, strategy second, has been like it's in my core. And it's a mindset. It's a
Yeah.
mindset that
Yep.
every single topic that comes up in business, I just remind myself, we start with thinking through the people impact and how does this affect people, and then we can craft a great strategy. And yeah, I'm excited to talk about that with you today.
I think that's great. Again, I had a similar sort of approach in, when I remember one of my first management roles, I thought, well, I'll just make everybody my friend, and then they'll want to
Yeah,
do and follow real easily. And boy, that was a big mistake. 'Cause,
yeah, yeah,
because I had kind of as a lot of us do, I had learned the skills a lot from either good managers or bad managers I had before. But I also had
yeah,
to make a clear, and I didn't know this at the time, but one of the clear delineations I needed to make was, am I interested in leading people or am I interested in managing people? And I think those are
yeah.
two very different skill sets. Now, it's not to say that a manager can't be a leader and a leader can't be a manager, but I feel like those are two very different skill sets. Is that something you've experienced as well, Chris?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, thank you. We use those terms to mean two separate things on purpose as we talk about, managing our business. Leadership, I equate with, that's the platform that you use to support people and help them be successful in their career and their journey. So that's why I love servant leadership. To me, leadership is all about being there to help other people be successful and understand where they're coming from and what their goals are. And management are the tactics and strategies that you need to run an efficient business and drive operations. And by having those two terms, and they're both wonderful terms, and as a good leader, you need to be good at both.
Yeah.
But I guess that ties right back to, people first is what leadership is about to me, and strategy second is what management is about. And yeah, those are important distinctions.
Yeah. Well, and some people, I could see splitting hairs would be like, isn't people first a strategy too?
Yeah, yeah,
Right. So how do you explain that, Chris?
yeah, yeah, great. So I guess, to me, strategy is it's maybe a little bit too cerebral, and
Sure.
mindset is more like coming from the heart and coming kind of soulful.
Yeah.
So I view the concept of people first is a mindset to me, because I don't want tactics in how I manage people. And I worry that if we look at managing people as a strategy, it comes down to tactics, and it's possible that you could be doing it for the wrong reasons. And so I like to put the pressure on myself that everything related to people rises above strategy, and it has to come from the heart. It has to come from the inner core.
Yeah.
And then when you're in touch with that, then the strategies kind of fall into place to be in perfect alignment with that. So we're never at odds between the two.
Right. Well, and this whole idea of what's happening in the world, and people have labeled it the Great Resignation and all these things, and
Yeah,
there's a million
yeah,
different reasons for why this is happening. Um, and people are like, people have realized they have the power. It's like, well, yeah, they've always kind of had the power, especially in businesses like ours, which are very
sure.
people driven, right? I like myself, I need engineers, you need engineers, you need very people that understand how to make things work, how to make things just in general. But
Yeah,
again, back to your earlier point, what I've found is that it isn't just creating a space for people to be able to make things, it's creating a space where people feel safe. It's where people feel that they can have their opinions heard, that their ideas matter, and that their impact goes further than just that thing they shipped out the door that day. Do
yeah,
you find that as
yeah.
well?
Yeah, well, for sure. And I'm old enough. I'm 50 years old. I mean, I've been in the business world long enough,
Yeah,
you kind of get conditioned to evolving your skill sets and your comfort around the environment that you're in. And I kind of feel, Kurt, what's going on here is we're at a crossroads. We're kind of at a point of disruption, and maybe the pandemic, maybe COVID, maybe these things have accelerated it, but um, there's a way that we've become comfortable running a business for the last 20 years where we go to the office every day. We work lots of consistent
yep,
hours, 8 to 5 or whatever. Like that's kind of what we've been conditioned to do. But COVID kind of put a shockwave through that, and I think it was already emerging that there's got to be a better way, or at least there's got to be another way. Maybe not a better way, but another way to do work, to stay connected, to open up our world, so you don't have to commute every day, you don't have to be at the office. And I think about, let's just take two companies. What has Amazon and Uber taught us over the last 10 years? Very, very highly connected, virtual, dynamic,
yep,
and that's the emerging of very successful companies. Why can't our cultures emerge in the same way? And it's a bummer that it took something like COVID to just create that
right,
shockwave, and there's lots of terrible things that came from COVID, but there's also a lot of wonderful things that have come about, in that it has forced us to really rethink what is work. Is
right.
work a destination, or is work an experience? And
Mm,
to your point, we as company leaders, it's more than just running a business. We have an opportunity, because we have the resources in a collective, sense, to do something with a company to mean more than just the job, and more than just the products that you sell, and
right.
to have a higher purpose. And I am so passionate about that. I can't pretend to have all the right answers, but I'm definitely on that journey, and I'm a willing participant.
Well, I think it goes back to what you
Yeah,
said earlier. If you have the right mindset starting out,
yeah,
if your aim is true, even if you miss the target, it's still a matter of what is your intentions. And I think it goes back
yeah,
to creating
yeah,
that safe space for individuals. Is that if they know your intentions, and one thing I've talked about is being vulnerable as a leader, which is difficult
yeah,
because you think, well, I've got to look like an oak, I've got to, so people
yeah,
don't worry about the organization or all these different things. But if they also know that you're having struggles and challenges, two things happen, in my opinion. One is that they feel safer coming to you with issues and problems. Number two is they will look for opportunities to help you. And that's when you start
yeah.
seeing where the next leaders in your organization are going to come from. And so I think there's a very positive side to showing some vulnerability as a leader. Would you agree with that, Chris? I see you nodding your
I
head.
do, yeah, well, and I appreciate. So yes, vulnerable trust is
Yep.
is a term that we use a lot. The word trust in and of itself, I'm a little bit at odds with that word, because I think the idea of trust is that you're expecting somebody to trust you, or it's like this transaction. And when you add the word vulnerable in front of it, I think it internalizes it and says, if you want to be trusted by anybody else, you have to start by trusting yourself and be vulnerable and put yourself out there and let people know who you really are. And with that, then it gives comfort for other people to,
Yeah.
to create that trust environment. If you're expecting the other person to go first, in a trust-based relationship, I just think that's the wrong starting point. So I'm glad that I didn't know that you were going to put that word vulnerable in there, but that's exactly how I think about it as well.
Yep. I think again, back to being intentional is key, because again, it goes back to, you've got this mindset, you're sitting in this space where you're feeling like you want to build that trust with people, and the way to do it is first to let them get to know you a little bit
Yeah.
as a human being, not as just a title in
Yeah.
an organization, because that's one of the first places to start. And some people, like I said, I've talked to a number of leaders over the years that they're very nervous about that fact, because they think that they're going to that imposter syndrome will creep up, because people will find out they actually don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, none of us do, so it's okay.
Yeah, we're all making it up.
We're all making it up as we go along.
But hey, I want so something I wanted to talk through.
Yeah,
So I know
please.
some of your audience are, more, mid-career
Yes.
leaders, whether leaders of people. I also want to clarify this: whether you're a leader of people or a leader of initiatives,
Yeah.
the same principles apply. And to go back to, kind of vulnerable trust, I feel that we all have superpowers. There's certain things that we are just all kind of naturally awesome at, and if we keep working on those things, we can be, even better. And so instead of looking at what we're not that great at as a weakness, I try to position it that let's celebrate what our superpowers are. And we follow a method at AbeTech called Traction
Yep.
EOS.
Yep.
And there's a tool in there called Elevate and Delegate. It's very simple, but just think of a conversation of sitting down with somebody and saying, when you think about your day, you think about your week, and you think about your dreams of the future, what are the things that you love doing, that you're really good at, that just when you're working on those things, kind of time passes by.
Yeah.
And then flip and be okay with the other part of the conversation. Tell me, what are the things that you do on a daily basis, or just things that you just don't really
Right.
love, you're not very good at. And when you think about the scalability of an organization, if you can have every single person identify what their superpower is, what they love spending time on, and then you can isolate the things that they don't love doing, well, guess what? There might be somebody else what I don't love doing might be somebody else's dream job. And so, as a leader, if you can draw that out and provide a framework to have that conversation, it's not about weaknesses, it's celebrating,
Right.
strengths. And then it actually could create an opportunity for somebody else.
Yep. Yeah, and that was one of the challenges I've had as a leader, was pulling out that future state from folks, because I would sit and I would talk with an engineer, for example, and I would say, where do you want to go in your career? Where do you want that future state to be? How can I help you get there? And they're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
More breaks,
Yeah. Yeah.
cater lunch. Um, but that's where I find a lot of leaders fails, because they'll just stop at whatever that person they're trying to coach provides
Yeah.
them. They stop with, um, well, this is what that person sees in themselves, so that's where I'm going to stop. Versus, I'm going to put what I see in that person into their plan or into their growth. And I think that it sounds simple, but that turning point in my career was huge in
Yeah.
terms
Yeah.
of building not only better relationships with the people who worked with me, but in building a safer space and creating employees that wanted to stay at the organization for a long time, because they looked at it not just as an organization that was there to give them a paycheck, but somebody that was helping them get and achieve their goals. Right. So
Yeah.
I
Mm.
talk to a lot of students that come out of school and they're like, should I go work for a big company or should I go work for a little company? And I'm like, well, there's a lot of options there. You go work for a giant enterprise Fortune 50 company. What you're doing is you're giving up a lot of accountability and responsibility to the organization. You're saying,
Yeah.
look, you decide what my benefits are. You decide what my PTO is. You decide what my 401k match is. You decide a good 50% of my career based on your policies. And then I will come, I will match that. Now, for a lot of people, that's great because it's a nice, safe space to be in. It seems very
Yeah.
stable, versus a smaller organization where they're more interested in, like, what do you want for what's more important to you, a 401k match this year, or would you like profit sharing?
Yeah.
There's a lot more decisions being made. And so for me, a lot of my advice is really understanding what are your goals from the get go will help you make those decisions on where those places you want to go at, right? Because again, our generation was much about you get that gold star on your resume, get that big name on your resume, and then the rest of your career is set, right?
Yeah,
Whereas
yeah.
a younger generation doesn't look at it that way. They don't look at it like, oh, if I put Facebook on my resume, my career is set. They're like, if I put Facebook on my resume, people are going to think I'm an evil person. I work for an evil corporation, right?
Well,
But anyways,
so
tell me about
can I?
that.
So a couple things come to mind.
Yeah,
I think we, and I've made these mistakes. I think you can try to over orchestrate your career to a certain degree and think about
right.
those things too much. Big companies, small companies. I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer. I think a lot of it comes down to. I would encourage everybody to be very clear of what you're looking for in a leader, and take a job where you feel that that leader is going to be that coach for you.
Yeah,
And those leaders exist in big small companies,
they
any
do.
kind of
Yep.
industry. And I guess the way I would think about it is, one of the things I wanted to talk about today is I have this idea of kind of like, how do you get promoted? Okay.
Yeah. Let's talk about that.
And I like to say that you got to do the job before you get the job.
Hmm.
And what I've made a mistake, Kurt, that I have over promoted people before they were ready, and unintentionally thinking I was doing the right thing, I helped them move into a position before they were ready. And I think about it, my son's a sophomore in high school and he plays basketball, and he is right on the bubble as whether or not he's ready for varsity basketball, right? So
Sure.
he played JV, but to the coach's credit, he got some play time on varsity during parts of the game when, if he made a mistake, it wasn't
Right.
going to ruin anything.
Right. Right.
And so he's finishing his sophomore year having a taste of what varsity basketball is like, but he didn't get exposed. He didn't fail. He's actually got a lot of confidence. And next year he'll get a little bit more. And if you take that coaching concept in sports and bring it to business, I think going back to that elevate, delegate, tell me what you love doing and where you're trying to take your career, and then try to find projects to feed people to get a taste of what that next thing might be, but don't take away their landing pad of
Yeah.
where they're at right now. And so I like that from a leadership perspective, and I also like that mentality for employees of this whole Great Resignation. Don't run away from a business just because you think you're running after a better opportunity. If you are, that's wonderful, but make sure where you're at that you're not just maybe changing the question a little bit. Can I
Right.
have an opportunity? Give me some building blocks, be my coach. That's part of what I worry about with the Great Resignation is I just hope people aren't running away from problems, and that
Right.
they're running towards opportunity. And part of that is
Yep.
knowing
Yep.
exactly what you're looking for, right?
Yep. Yeah. Well, I love that you segued into that because that's some of the things that I've gotten back from people when I've coached them is well, yeah, do the job before you get the job, but I'm not getting the opportunity to do the job before I
Yeah,
get the job.
yeah,
And a lot of times my answer is, well, you get 100% of what you don't ask for. So
yeah,
if you're
yeah.
not in there, you might not get that first project that you saw the CEO kind of hand off to your peer. You might not get that one, but if you're not throwing your hat in the ring every time, and if you're just selectively throwing in your hat and then judging from a distance, well, I didn't get that project, so I don't have a future here.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah. What? Yeah. Can I add just a
yeah,
couple thoughts to this? Is I love servant leadership. I don't love the term servant because I think it can get confused, but I love
yeah,
the spirit
right,
of what servant leadership is. So intentional leadership is something that I kind of use interchangeably. So
yep,
if a leader is trying to be a servant leader, an intentional leader, and create that wonderful work environment, let me just flip the table. If you can be an intentional employee, and if you can have the conversation with your boss, whoever that supervisor is, ask them what things are on their list that they don't love doing and that at some point they would love to get off of their plate.
yep,
And to me, that is how you can be a very intentional employee and help your leader be a better leader by saying, I could probably take a few of those things off of your plate. And then that way you're creating a transaction between as teammates, and how do we help each other out, versus looking at it as, you're getting passed up for an opportunity, or you're not being provided, this job, that job. And that's where vulnerable trust comes back, that if a leader can be vulnerable enough to say, hey, here's some things that I could really use some help with, and an employee to say, you know what, I'd love to try that out. To me, I think that there's like a Venn diagram overlap there that can create some really great outcomes.
Yeah, and that's and back to flipping it back on the leader, is that something I had to do also intentionally, was look for things that I could hand off, and be
Yeah,
more
yeah,
intentional about it, and then explaining what the opportunity was to the person of why I was handing it off. I wasn't handing it off because it's just something I don't like doing. It was something, to your point, it's getting in the way of what my role actually is. But you performing this role or doing this task, or this new role, this is what it means to you, not what it means to me,
right.
right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. A term that so I've learned a little bit along the way. I made some mistakes on planning out projects. As you get promoted in leadership, oftentimes it's because you were good at something, and then you get promoted. So you have to
Right.
transition from being good at doing the thing to leading somebody else. And it's too easy when you're mapping out projects to like get into the details and tell somebody, how you best intentions, but you'll tell somebody maybe how they should do something. I've adopted a term that came from Traction as well, called "What does done look like?"
Yeah.
And we're very, very conscious, intentional about when we're talking about projects, of let's forget about the how and all the details, and and I call it a close your eyes and describe, when you're at that endpoint, what does done look like, and draw out those emotions, and forget about, let's assume that you have unlimited resources, unlimited
Right.
time,
Yep.
everything went perfect, and it's kind of like starting with the end in mind. And I think as leaders, I would encourage you to be very conscious of that. If you're trying to delegate to somebody, give them the creative latitude to go figure out how to do it, but have a conversation together of what does done look like,
Right.
and then step away and let people figure it out.
Right. Yeah. And to your point, the people first mindset does not mean just when you think of what is done look like, you think of a metric or something like that. It's also like, what is our jobs like now that this is done? How is your role changed? My role changed? So to your point, if it's a large initiative, right? Like, let's say we're putting in a new HR system or new ERP system, we're
Yeah,
doing digital transformation. And the lie that is digital transformation over the years has been that it's digital, but it's actually organizational change. It's human
sure.
change, because people's roles are changing as part of that digital side. Teams makeups are changing, silos are breaking down, all these different things. Um, and so, if you don't have that people first mindset, your digital transformation is going to fail right out the get go.
For
You'll be
sure.
like, what? I've seen it, and this years before even digital transformation was a buzz term, when Salesforce really started to take over. These sales leaders would say, great, now I can pay attention to what my salespeople are doing. Um, and so they put Salesforce in, and then all of a sudden, a year in, they're like, well, only 30% of my salespeople are actually using Salesforce. Why is that? And they're like, because it isn't for them, it's for you,
Yes.
to keep
Yeah.
an eye on them, and there's no value to them. You can talk to them
Yeah.
till you're blue in the face about all the value there is for them. But again, that's a perfect example of a digital transformation that I've seen in sales for the last 10 years, where, and now you take it into all aspects of an organization. And again, if people go in and think Salesforce is going to solve my problem, then your problem's much bigger
Yeah.
than that.
Yeah, 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 for sure. Software, all these tools, they basically they help us be more efficient, but you have to have really,
Yep.
really well structured underlying business processes. You
Right.
can't throw software at any problem and expect it to be fixed if you don't have a
Right.
good a foundation of a
Yep.
good process.
Yep.
That's super important.
Well, let's continue on the people first
Yeah,
versus strategy first, which is the idea of innovation. And this is the one thing that I love, CEOs and leaders talking about. I want people to be innovative. I want people to be innovative. But what they're thinking of is this sort of fake innovation. Innovation is failure. That's what innovation is. Innovation is failing and failing and being rewarded for that failure. But what a lot of folks look at is like, well, why can't you just come up with new ideas? And it's like, well, I do have new ideas. You won't let me implement them because you think they'll fail. Um, well, they might fail, they might not, but how are we going to learn, right? If we don't take those chances and those risks. How is the idea of innovation for you, Chris? How has it been? How have you navigated it, knowing that, investing in innovation or giving people more room to do this means failure? Can you reward failure? How do you think about that?
Yeah, it's gosh, the topic is so it's such a bizarre conversation to me because
Right.
the moment that we think we have it figured out
Right.
and that we're trying to not, the moment that we think we have anything figured out is the moment you come to work and something in the world changes. And so
Right.
we're always figuring it out. And I'm sure I made 10 mistakes already today. It is absolutely part of the learning. And you just absolutely have to espouse an environment where it's okay to make mistakes. What's not okay is to not have a good plan of where you're trying to go. That's where that, what does done look like? As long as we know where we're trying
Right.
to go, the road is going to be curvy. There's all kinds of bumps and so forth. It's when we don't plan ahead and we just kind of show up and we fake it till we make it.
Right.
That's where we get into trouble. But strategic, so we use the word strategic intent. Intent is kind of woven through a lot of different things that I believe in, and having strategic intent, knowing what you're trying to accomplish, then just assume that you're going to have all kinds of mistakes along the way. But Jeff Bezos talks about one-way door decisions and two-way door decisions,
Right.
and two-way door decisions are, you think about it, you go through that door, oh, wrong door, and then you just come back through and you try something else. There's very, very few decisions in business that are one-way door decisions, where once you make a decision that you can't back up from it. And if you're making too many one-door decisions, you're doing something wrong. And so I really like that analogy of just, you got to go try stuff and then bounce back. And this is where, teams need to trust each other, and leaders need to lead and not manage, and, just get out of the way a little bit and let people figure it out.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Get out of your own way in a lot of
Yeah.
cases, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because again, you might have that role of the person who has to be the decider on things, but it doesn't mean that all the ideas are going to come from you.
For sure.
And
Yeah.
hopefully they're not. Hopefully, hopefully,
Yeah,
um,
I like to say that I actually feel like my job is to make as few decisions as possible. My job is to make sure that the right questions are being asked. And
right,
so if I can create an environment and be part of that environment where we're just constantly questioning everything and asking really smart, intelligent, deep dive questions,
yeah,
then there should be very few things that actually come to my desk that have to be decided
right,
by me. And that's a good message for a leader wherever you're at in your career. Is if you're the go-to for making every decision all the time, that's not scalable, it's untenable, it's very stressful, and you're not actually serving your team, if everything has to flow through you. And that's why I love servant leadership. Kurt, actually think of servant leadership. Think of a rock stack that's an upside down triangle. Okay.
yep,
So you have one rock and then somehow you've built up rock. So it's an upside down triangle. I view leadership as being that foundation rock at the bottom, not the org chart of the leader being at the top. And so if
right,
you view yourself as being at the bottom, and our job is to essentially provide this balanced support mechanism, there's no way that you can make all those decisions. And so the
right.
whole point is to provide a stable, balanced environment where everybody else is making decisions. I love that visual, and it's a reminder for me often, of how to navigate meetings. Because
Right.
we're all doers, we all love to jump in and solve problems,
Yep.
but a lot of times that's just not what we're supposed to be doing as leaders.
Right. Yeah. And so with that, if you look at how you've grown as a leader, especially, like you mentioned, you've been there for 3 years in this role and you've gone through a pretty significant upheaval in terms of
Yeah.
process and culture, thanks to that. What do you see? What are you hoping for in the future? In your role, but also, what are you seeing in general? Where are you hoping things go? Will things go back to normal? Where do you see things going in your own crystal ball?
Well, I don't think things go back to normal. As I was saying earlier, especially if you want to talk about employment and hiring people and providing
Right,
good career path. My feeling is that a lot of this was already underway. We just didn't see it because the pandemic kind of accelerated a lot of things. I was going to kind of interject here that this word pandemic. I researched this a little bit. That the word demic is demos. It's a Greek word for people, right? And pan means all. So
yep,
there's things that are happening in the world all the time that affect all people. And then one of the other trends that's going on is the sansdemic. And the sansdemic is basically that the reality is there's more people, baby boomers, leaving the workforce than there are, young people coming in to fill those jobs. And so our world is being
yep,
disrupted right before us. We have baby boomers who have largely kind of helped structure how we think about corporate America today.
right,
They're leaving. We have new people coming into the workplace. There's fewer of them, and they have grown up in the Amazon, Uber, the online universe of things, and they
the
and they
on-demand
think about things
universe.
differently. And so we have I hopefully it's a healthy collision, but we have a coming together here of of different ways of thinking about what is work. I think this was happening beforehand, and I think it's just all accelerated. And
Yep,
if you look forward to the next 20 years, knowing that this whole labor shortage, this is not going away. There's
right,
fewer people to fill those jobs, and so we have to invest in automation. We have to digitize our businesses because anything that
hmm
was historically done manually, there's simply not going to be enough people. And those probably, at some point, those might not be the right fulfilling jobs. And so
right.
I actually am pretty excited. It's a little scary, because this is happening very quickly and
It is.
there's a lot of, quick movement. But I feel like what's happening is forcing a conversation that needed to be happening anyway in companies in what is our culture of the future, and how do we take all the great things that we love over the last 20, 30 years and keep them, but adapt them to also apply for the next 20
hmm
years and a different mindset and a different culture, of people that are going to be running companies in the future.
Yeah, I love that. I love that sentiment, Chris. I think that's fantastic. So, last question: what would be some
Yeah.
advice you'd give someone around developing a people first mindset in their role? Right. So, think of someone who is much like you and me are putting out fires pretty regularly, but
Yeah.
you can get blinders on very quickly to that. So if someone, if you were sitting down with a leader and they were like, tell me about how you develop this people first mindset and why it's so important, what would be your advice?
Well, I think it's really important that we all spend time really knowing, our why. I would encourage before you try to figure out how to navigate your company and what all those things, just start with being very clear about who you are, what you're wanting to accomplish. Find somebody that you trust, that you can have that conversation with to get
Mhm.
really clear on, not the what's and the hows and all the details, but just where are you hoping that your career and your life goes. Because if you know that, a good leader that wants to see you be successful will love to have that conversation and help you figure that out. And so that would be my starting point, Kurt, to
Yeah.
start internally, find somebody you can trust, and then be vulnerable with your leader and say, can you help me get there? And think of it as a coaching, kind of a coach and an athlete kind of transaction, and how that works versus, in business. I really like, the sport element of how to think about leadership, because a
Yep.
coach isn't supposed to be on the court,
Right.
and a coach can't call out every single play in the moment. And
Yep.
there's got to be this relationship between coach and player where the player's making the decisions in real time, but they know they have the support of the coach. They've been trained well, and that's I love that. I love the imagery of that when I think about good leadership. So I don't know, is that helpful?
That's super helpful. Yeah. Again, I've said it a million times on this show. And my dad always said there's two kinds of people in the world. There's people who have a coach, and there's people that don't know they need a coach.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you are looking to grow in your career in that leader, like just like Chris said, finding that person who can be there to be an advocate, or at least someone just to help hold you accountable to the things that you say you want to do, be a part of it. And those people are probably in your organization. You just need to start there and start having those conversations, because the grass usually is just a different shade of green
Yeah. Yeah.
when you move on. So you can do a lot in your organization without having to feel like you need to leave to grow your career. But again, you get 100% of what you don't ask for. So if you don't start out by coming and being intentional and saying this is the impact I want to have, then the organization will decide your impact. Your leader will decide your impact, and that might not work for you. So I love what
Yeah.
you said there, Chris. I think it's super important. So Chris, I could talk to you all day,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, me too.
if I want to follow you, if I want to know more about the work you do and connect with you, where's a great place to go? Where are you most active?
So Kurt, I'm real active on LinkedIn. You can look for, do a search on Chris Heim of AbeTech. You'll find me. I'm very intentional on LinkedIn. It's I use that as my platform to share thought leadership, and a lot of the ideas, that we're talking about today. I'm very purposeful about that on LinkedIn. I would love to have a conversation. If anybody is looking for, a mentor, I would love to help them either directly or help them, get connected with somebody. So yes, please follow me on LinkedIn. Join in the conversation.
Yeah.
And Kurt, I just want to applaud you too. I really think it's awesome, what you're doing and having this video podcast. It's an important message. I appreciate the time that you put into this, and you're creating great outcomes for people.
Thank you, Chris. I again, back at you. I think having folks like yourself with the right mindset out there and then sharing it to let people know it's okay, I think is really important. I think the leaders that are doing the work you're doing without sharing the learnings from it are doing a disservice to people. So I applaud you for going out there and sharing and saying, no, it's okay for you to be thinking this way. So I appreciate what you're doing. So thanks again, Chris. We'll have you back on the show sometime again soon. Okay.
I would love that, Kurt. All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a great rest of your day. All right, folks, that was Chris. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me. I honestly, there is a lot of great information in there from Chris. I hope you go back, check out some of the pieces that we talked about, watch it again, because again, that's why I love doing the show. You learn so much from great people like Chris. So go and give him a follow, check him out there. Thank you so much for taking your time out of your day. We will see you next week.